Today we are reviewing an English learning app called EF Hello. It's pretty interesting and I'm going to tell you what I think all the pros and cons are to see if maybe you might want to check it out. Hi, I'm Josh, your American English guide. So EF Hello is a mobile app for both Android and iPhone. I was able to test out the Android version, and the reason why I tested the app in the first place was because someone from EF Hello reached out to me and asked if I would like to review the app. Now, to get this out of the way in the beginning, I am not being paid by them, I'm not being sponsored by them, I get nothing out of this. I simply want to help you guys. This is my brutally honest review, and they do have a couple really big negative points that we're going to get into later. But let's talk a bit more about the app itself. So there are different levels, all the way from beginner up to advanced, and I took a look at all these different levels. There are different types of activities. The basic layout is very much like a text conversation, which I think is really cool and interesting, but at the same time, all the lessons work that way. And so it can get kind of repetitive and boring sometimes. But one really good thing is that they actually mix many different areas of language. So you'll have some speaking practice, pronunciation practice, listening practice, vocabulary practice, grammar practice, right? They try to cover all the different areas, and I think it's really good for that. So it's very well-rounded. So that gives you sort of a general picture, but let's take a look at some specific pros and cons. Let's start with the pros. So first, there is built-in word practice where you can record yourself and compare it to a native directly in the app for words that you get wrong. Another really good thing is that contractions are generally included. I saw more often than not that they are using contractions, which is super important because contractions are a normal part of speech, regardless of formality. Next, there are a wide variety of voices, including both male and female, which I think is really great. Next, the way each lesson seems to be set up is you start with a video, and you'll listen to that, and you'll watch the video, right? And then the exercises in the different areas of language, like vocabulary, speaking, whatever, are sort of based around that video lesson on a particular topic. Now, one of the really good things, aside from just that, is that at the end of all the exercises, it will replay that video so that you can actually sort of see where you're at after you go through all that, which is a super useful, very powerful technique. For vocabulary specifically, one good pro here is that when they introduce new vocabulary, they often show a picture along with a definition, and this is super useful so that instead of just trying to memorize the new word or compare it to, your native language word, you actually have a direct image that you can associate with that new word, just like you did in your native language when you were young. For listening, they have a really good activity, which is where you listen and then you choose the right reply, and it'll give you several options. So it's like in a conversation, and they'll say like, oh, hi, how are you? And then you have some options, but it's based on the topic, and it uses a lot of this new vocabulary and grammar that you've been learning. One really good and interesting thing in terms of speaking and pronunciation is that it seems to analyze your speaking and your answers when you record things, and it will actually use pieces of that for later targeting of certain words that you have difficulty with. This also includes access to teachers, which can be, of course, very useful, but I don't know exactly how much that they would help you. You can definitely ask questions. I tried that out and I did get responses. Now, the last pro is also a con, and I'll tell you why. So they seem to use a mix of British English and American English. In what I saw, I didn't go through every lesson in the app, but from what I saw, the videos are very often in British English, but then a lot of the questions and other things that you hear recorded, like vocabulary words, are often in American English. And this isn't the biggest problem in the world. In fact, it could be very good, I think, very beneficial to listen to different accents. But I also think that it is more efficient, especially in the earlier stages or even in the lower intermediate stage, to really focus on one accent. And if you're trying to improve your pronunciation specifically, you should definitely try to focus on one particular accent, at least for a while, and then you can maybe branch to other sources of material. So it does seem to be better for American English learners because a lot of the material seems to be in American English, and it's just the videos that I've seen. I have heard some British voices in the material, but I heard a lot more American voices. But again, it's not the biggest problem, and so just go with it. You'll be fine. Now, let's get to the cons. So this app definitely has a lot of good things. Okay, it has a lot of good things, but it does have some cons. Probably one of the single biggest cons, in my opinion, especially if you are trying to improve your pronunciation, and that's even if you're just trying to be understood. Most of you probably know that I'm not a big fan of Elsa, the Elsa app, because it will help you, but you won't really sound natural. It's a little weird, and it's not the best AI. This pronunciation AI in EF Hello seems to be worse than Elsa. And I'm sure that this is something that they'll probably try to improve in the future. But for right now, there's 2 points you need to be aware of here. One time it told me to, repeat a sentence and record myself. And most of the time I did this, it gave me a perfect or near perfect score. Okay. But there was one time where I recorded, I was speaking naturally and clearly. I was making sure to be just, clear enough, but still natural. And it gave me 67%, which is really, really weird. More importantly, this is the really big problem. I intentionally tried to record a sentence with a really thick accent. Like, I want to go to the store because I like the coffee. I don't know, something like that, right? I don't remember what the sentence was. And it gave me only 3% wrong. 3% wrong. So it was 97% correct with that really thick accent. That's a problem, guys. That is definitely a problem. Now, one other negative, which is not the biggest problem, but it could be a nice touch if they fix it. Many of the recordings don't seem to have any background noise, which is really good for beginners, but a lot of language learners in general, right? Like maybe your listening gets up to around the intermediate level, but then if there's lots of background noise or stuff, then all of a sudden you can't understand as well. And so I think it's good in the intermediate and advanced levels to incorporate background noise so that you can actually improve and understand just like you would in your native language. In addition to that, many times the recordings for the conversations that you go through, most of the time they are recorded in a pretty natural sounding way, but sometimes they do sound kind of artificial and very scripted, like you can sort of tell they're reading a line, kind of. And not the biggest point, but that would obviously be better if it were improved, especially in terms of intonation. In addition, some of the grammar points that they teach, I think, are way too, especially at the lower levels, some of these points are way too specific and not particularly useful at those levels. This is a big problem that I would say almost all courses have, where they start teaching you like article rules when you're a beginner. You don't need to know article rules when you're a beginner, guys. Article rules, if at all, will come later. Would I recommend this app? Definitely. I think that you can get a lot out of this app. I would generally recommend it. Just don't trust the pronunciation AI. And then for advanced learners, I looked at some of the advanced content. It does seem to be quite advanced. The sentences are a lot longer, the material is a lot more complicated, and the grammar and stuff. I think for the advanced level, yes, you can definitely benefit from that. However, there is one very big important point, which is that this is not free. I think they offer a free trial or sort of limited access so you can try it out. If I remember correctly, I think they wanted like $85 for like a year or forever. I don't remember exactly. For that price, it's worth it. Thank you guys so much for watching another English Hacks lesson, and I'll see you in the next one.